that song? Stick around to find out. It is relevant. Trust me. See you on the other side. Hey, that's better than me doing the Wheel of Time Keeps on Turning reprise from last week. The Wheel of Time keeps on turning. Anyways, hello! Welcome to my review for The Wheel of Time Season 1, Episode 4, The Dragon Reborn. Very first thing I have to talk about is the spoiler warning! If you have not seen up through Season 1, Episode 4 of The Wheel of Time, then you do not want to watch this video. However, you do not have to worry about spoilers from the books if you haven't read the books, because I haven't really either. Well, I kind of have. But actually, let's start with that. So if you haven't seen my video last week, let me talk a second about my relationship to the books. So I read the first two 20 years ago. Don't remember them a whole lot. I do remember some things. And I am rereading the first book now, but I am currently behind where the show is at in my reading. I guess. I mean, what I just read about is actually not in the show at all. They've cut out a lot of things, although elements of what I just read were put in the show. Things are a little bit out of order, but in any case, what this means is, in this episode, when I was watching it, I am, for all intents and purposes, not familiar with the source material for the most part. There's one thing from the source material I do want to talk about in this review, just as a more generalized thing, but for this episode, for the most part, I'm going to be approaching it from the perspective of someone who is not super familiar with what this is based off of, so I am looking at it purely as a show. And from that lens, I would say this wasn't a great episode. It actually, the ending really did it for me. Like, I would have thought, without that ending, I would have thought this was a pretty boring episode. I felt like it was pretty boring for the most part, up through until we got to that exciting ending there. I mean, there were some interesting things in it. Like, I love getting a little more detail about the relationship between the waters and the Aes Sedai. And I will talk about that in more detail a little bit later in the review. But overall, I just feel like that this episode did not move the story forward tremendously. The overall story was not moved forward in a meaningful way. Now, we did get this maybe reveal or somewhat reveal at the end of the episode that might be moving the story forward, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But other than that, I just feel like it was kind of the adventure of the week. Like, this whole false dragon storyline, I just feel like it felt very episodic rather than serialized. Like, it didn't feel like it overall moves the overall story forward. But yeah, it was fine though. I did like that ending. So now let's go through the three different storylines, and I'm gonna start with the one that I liked the least, and then build up to the storyline that I liked the most in this episode. Okay, so the storyline that I least liked is the same one that I least liked last week. Is this Perrin and Egwene and the Gypsies? What's the point? What's happening here? For a moment, I thought we were going into interesting territory when that old lady was talking to Perrin and talking about all these different weapons, and she ends with axe, and she keeps emphasizing axe, and that, of course, is the weapon he accidentally killed his wife with, and, he is just dumbfounded by that. I thought we were going somewhere interesting with that. I was like, oh, whoa, how does she know? Oh my god, she knows. She knows he killed his wife with an axe. But then they kind of just drop it, and the next time that they talk to each other, she's just talking more generally about how she believes in peace and nonviolence and all of this stuff. That's all good. I agree with that. That's fine, but I don't get where we're going. Like this, I felt like this was a little pointless. Maybe in retrospect, I'll look back and go, okay, I see what they were doing there. But right now, it just feels like, to quote Monty Python, get on with it! Like, what is the point of this storyline? And then we have Egwene is hanging out with that sketchy dude, and I don't care what anyone says, that dude is sketchy. I don't trust him. And pining over Rand, and he's like, "Oh, who's this man that you love?" And so there's where the song comes in, because she's sitting there looking at the stars, and I thought she was gonna bust into "Somewhere Out There," as if we were gonna cut over to Rand looking at the stars, going, "And when the night," whatever the I forget what the lyrics are, the James Ingram part. Are you getting these 1980s references I'm dropping on you right now? Anyways, that's what it felt like to me. It felt very cheesy. And it felt like, what is the point of this? Yes, we know they love each other, they miss each other, blah, blah, blah. Get on with it! So, did not care for this storyline. Let's see if they do something more interesting with it in the future. So now let's move on over to the next storyline, which is with Matt and Rand and Tom Maryland. I think I called him Merlin last time. I think it's more like Maryland, like the state that I grew up in, Maryland, similar to that. And this storyline, it really did feel like the show was trying to lead us to believe that perhaps Matt is the Dragon Reborn, or maybe he could end up being another false dragon, like we are witnessing in this other storyline. And we get the story from Tom about his nephew, who believed that he was the false dragon, and how that all went down, and he ended up just killing himself. Very dark story, but it gets us thinking about Matt and what's happening with him. But I'm sitting here watching it and going, is what Matt is experiencing, is that really different than what Rand is going through with the dreams? They both had the same dream, and we see Rand's dream first, and at the end, we do see Matt's dream earlier on when he's vomiting that dark stuff, but then at the end, we see Rand's dream first, and then in a previous episode, all three of them, including Perrin, had these dreams with the dark one in it. And this I can speak to from the books, because this is from the books that the three of them do have these recurring dreams, although the dreams have been different than the ones that I've read in the books so far. But the idea that all three of them would have these dreams with the dark one is from the books. And I was having a hard time distinguishing between what Matt was experiencing and what Rand was experiencing, so I wasn't necessarily buying what the show was selling me, although I do have to admit, I was fooled for a split second there at the end. I was like, wait, he didn't kill that family, did he? Oh my god! But of course he didn't. It was the Fade. And that was exciting, the Fade comes running off. This group is the only one that seems to be actively chased by the dark forces. Last week they encountered that dark friend, the bartender in that town they went to. This week they encounter a Fade, so the other ones aren't being actively chased by the dark forces right now, the other two groups. But they are. So that's kind of interesting. And we get a lot more character development with Matt as well, where he has that interaction with the little girl and starts thinking about his sisters. It's very sad at the end when that doll's just laying on the ground. It's so sad. It's so sad that she got killed. But we are getting a little bit more into Matt. And by the way, Matt apparently has been recast for season 2. I'm not sure exactly why. I haven't read that much into the details, but he's been recast. So I wonder if they're going to do a Dario, which is going to be a completely different dude, or they're going to try to have someone who's somewhat similar. But it kind of takes me out of the character a little bit, because I'm watching this character and going, well, next season he's going to look different. So I almost wish I didn't know that yet. Sorry if I just ruined that for you. Anyways, so I did want to, before I move on to the last storyline, I did want to touch on this idea of the Dragon Reborn, because that is one thing that I do know from the books, and I'm not going to spoil it. I do know who the Dragon Reborn is in the books. However, I have heard that the showrunners have kind of thrown it out there that the Dragon Reborn in the books may or may not also be the Dragon Reborn in the show. It could be somebody different. I've heard it described as the show is a different iteration of the wheel. It's a different spinning of the wheel of time than the book. So potentially we may even have a different Dragon Reborn. Now, if that's the case, I could already imagine that there's going to be an uproar from some of the fans of the books. But me not being super attached to the books, I actually think that's brilliant. I think it's super risky because you are risking outrage from all these book fans. But I think it could pay off if they do it. We don't know for sure that they're going to. It could very well end up being the same person from the book. But this episode was trying to give us a lot of reason to believe that it could be a number of different people who are the Dragon Reborn. So with that said, let us now get into the third and final storyline, my favorite storyline of the episode. Okay, so the last storyline is the one with Lan and Nynaeve and Moiraine, and then all these Aes Sedai and warders hanging out, and this false dragon who they are trying to contain. And I actually really loved the cold opening. That definitely is not from the books. I actually just read a part of the book where I think they kind of mentioned something about that city offhand, but definitely not in the books. But I think maybe that whole storyline, I'm not sure, but I think this whole storyline is a deviation from the books. I don't think it happens in the books. But I could be wrong. I did like it. And I did like how they had to take turns having two of them hold him back because he has all this power. And this dude looked like a false Jesus prophet. I mean, I'm assuming it was intentionally made to look exactly like Jesus, so they could, so that they could be like really like hit hit you over the head with their message. I don't know. He did look like Jesus, or at least the American, depiction of what Jesus looked like. So. I did find it interesting, though, in the end, his dialogue with Moiraine. But actually, let me backtrack a little bit. Let me get to that in a second. So we get a lot of character development with Nynaeve and Lan, and Nynaeve really starting to warm up to Lan. She has this line where she says, "You're not at all what I thought you were," which was a lapdog to the Aes Sedai. And he says, "You're exactly what I thought you were," and then it gets cut off. I'm like, what? What is it? I don't know what he was going to say. What were we going to say? Say it! No, I want to know. I feel like that's just going to be dropped and never mentioned again, but I don't know. But they had great interactions, and I really enjoyed seeing more of the kind of bond that the warders and the Aes Sedai have with each other. That was really good. You know what it reminded me of a lot was his Dark Materials books and shows with the humans and their bond with their demons. It seemed a lot like that, especially when Lan at one point says to Moiraine, "I shouldn't drink because when I drink, you get emotional." So they affect each other. And in fact, I thought that one dude, when his Aes Sedai was killed, was she the green one? No, wait. The Indian one was the green one. Were they both green? I don't know. Whatever color she was. Like, she dies. And and they pan over to him in the woods and fighting, and I almost thought he was just going to keel over and die, because that's what happens when your demon dies in his Dark Materials. Wasn't that, but you definitely could see that he felt it. Like, he knew that she died. So that was very powerful, and that was really good. And that dude, by the way, he was in the trailer. We got that scene from the trailer where he goes, "Do you know what Aes Sedai means in the old tongue?" And I saw in the trailer, I was like, who the hell is this guy? I don't recognize who that is from the books. It seemed very Boromir-like, or Faramir more like it seemed very Lord of the Rings-y from out of context in the trailer. So I was actually glad to see that in context. So I was like, well, who is that dude and what is he talking about? So we get that. All of that was really good. So that was probably... I wouldn't say this storyline was boring. When I say boring, I'm kind of thinking more of the other two storylines, quite honestly. And then we get this big dramatic ending where that king who the false dragon converted, who we saw at the cold opening, is now coming with his forces to save him, and we get a really great dialogue with Moraine and him. So really great lines out of this. One of them is when Moraine says, the Wheel of Time doesn't want anything any more than the wind or rain want anything. Humans want things. So I thought that was really good. And I really loved how you put him in his place, because we could see how powerful he was all throughout this episode, how it took 2 Aes Sedai at a time to kind of contain him. And every once in a while he would burst out of it and they'd have to recontain him. He was presented as being very powerful. But another great line from her was, if you were the real dragon, as powerful as you are, there would be... Oh, God, I wish I could remember the word for word line, because it comes in important in just a minute. But there would be a burst of sun that you would never, you've never seen before. The power of the sun. Oh, my gosh. I wish I could remember. Then they have this big dramatic battle. It seems like they've defeated him, and then he comes back, and then it seems like and then they defeat him again by when Lan is starting to have blood gushing out of his throat. And I was like, well, he's not going to die. There's no way. Not only would that be a huge change from the books, but we've already seen, there's a scene from the trailer where he's wearing all white and he's mourning about something that we haven't seen yet. So I know that wasn't going to happen. But then Nynaeve comes in, gets, really upset, and this huge, burst of light comes out, and the false dragon Jesus dude is he's repeating what Moraine said, a burst of sunlight. So we are led to believe that Nynaeve may be the Dragon Reborn. Now, she doesn't fit into the timeline of that prophecy. Moraine had already ruled her out in the first episode because of her age, because the Dragon Reborn, according to this prophecy, should be around 20, and she's 25, 26. But now we're being told maybe the prophecy was wrong. Maybe it could be Nynaeve. And I really love that us book readers are questioning. I'm not really a book reader, but I know who the Dragon Reborn is from the books, because I know that much. But we're questioning who's the Dragon Reborn, because maybe it is the person from the books and maybe it's not. So, and I don't know how true fans of the books, people who have read them through all the way at least once, if not twice, I don't know how those kinds of people would feel if they do change who the Dragon Reborn is. But I love that we're questioning it. Is it Matt? Is it Nynaeve? We're really, really led to believe that it's Nynaeve, but I don't think that necessarily means it is. So we shall see moving forward. Hopefully next week will be a little bit more back on task. We get a little bit more back into moving the story forward a little bit. Okay, so let me go ahead and give you my rating out of 10 for this week's episode of The Wheel of Time, Season 1, Episode 4, The Dragon Reborn. And out of 10, with 1 being the lowest possible score, 10 being the highest possible score, my rating for this week's episode is a 7. Definitely would have been lower if not for that ending. There were some other interesting things in there, like the connection between the Warders and the Aes Sedai and that sort of thing. But for the most part, I found this episode to be boring until the end. But it ends up being a decent episode. Still one that I feel like didn't move the story forward overall all that much. But I'm giving it a solid 7. I haven't given any episode lower than a 7 yet, so it's still pretty solid. Opening to the season. We are halfway through after 2 weeks, because we've got 3 episodes last week. Then we got 4 more episodes upcoming, and I'm really excited about continuing to watch this show and continuing to review it weekly. So with that said, I will see you back here next week with my review for Wheel of Time, Season 1, Episode 5. And if you're into Star Trek, please check out my reviews for Discovery, which I'm also reviewing weekly. Alright, everybody, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.